All right, good morning, and welcome to the pre-Hoshana Rabbah Part 1 edition of today's Daf Yomi. We're going to have two today, right? First day of the doubleheader. And today's Daf, the week's Daf is sponsored by Joel Kastner in honor of Rabbi Loiterman, myself, and Kahal Yereim Daf Yomi Shiur. Thank you so much to him. And thank the Gislasons for the Sukkah and whoever sponsored the spread.
Joel Kastner.
Joel Kastner. Yeah. This is the breakfast. The breakfast is wonderful. Yep. It's great. And we are continuing on the study of which Kohanim, or which people, really not which Kohanim, because some of them were non-Kohanim, which people cannot do the service. And if they do the service in the Beis HaMikdash, it invalidates the sacrifices. And we talked all about the people who have a relative who passed away. We talked about people who are non-Kohanim. We talked about people who were Tameh. We talked about people who were a Tvul Yom, right? Somebody who had gone to the mikveh that day and had not gotten to the nightfall yet. We are talking about a Kohen not wearing the garments of the Kohen. And since Jeff pointed out to me the other day that we have in the back of the blue chumash, these amazing photos, it's worthwhile just to point them out, that these amazing photos, these are the garments that were worn by the Kohen Gadol and by the regular Kohen. We learned
the white is the regular Kohen.
Kohen Gadol, that's right. And so we had learned that you cannot, if you are a regular Kohen, wear the Kohen Gadol's garments, and if you're the Kohen Gadol, you cannot wear the regular Kohen's garments. You have to wear the right garments. It is critical, as we learned, that you only wear the garments, not anything else. You cannot add garments to the garments that you already wear. That's what we're going to be discussing today. The four garments that a regular Kohen wears are these pants that we discussed yesterday. What happens if they're too long or too short? They have them here as breeches, short pants. I don't know from the Gemara yesterday if that seemed to me like they were so short, right? Because talk about them.
Would that be considered sneakers if they're short pants?
Well, they're underneath this big robe, so you can't see them even, right? So they're underneath this big long robe. It's a good question, right? That was my impression. Was we were talking about ankle length, because they were long and they dragged on the ground. So I'm not sure here. Yeah. So their picture, they probably have a source for someplace. I'm gonna have to look into that, how long these pants were. But then there was this robe over it, right? And then there was a belt that got tied. We said tied up by the elbows, where that's exactly where it is here. So it's not down by the waist. It's a little bit higher than the waist. And then this turban, the mikbas, the turban that he wore on top. Right. Okay, so that was what he wore. And the Kohen Gadol had 8 garments, right? He has these pants underneath, right? And then he's got a belt underneath you cannot see over here. And then he's got a long cloak, but it's made of a different color. And he has a turban, which may or may not have been the same type of turban that the regular Kohen wore. But in addition, he has this apron, which is backwards apron. And then he's got a breastplate, right? And it hooks over onto the back in the breastplate. He's got this tzitz, which is right over here, which is what we were talking about, this gold plate that says Kodesh LaHashem. That's not really a great translation, so we're just going to call it the tzitz. That's what that is. And this is important because we talked about it when we were dealing with sacrifices that were tameh. This helps the sacrifices that are tameh remain valid, regardless of the fact that they are tameh. You could still bring them, the Kohen's tzitz. So this is all of these items, and that's what they were wearing. So we're going to start off yes?
There's nothing in there that would require actually tzitzis itself.
No. And in fact, you can't wear tzitzis. Right?
Again?
Cannot wear tzitzis.
No,
right?
Underneath all that?
You can't wear tzitzis because extra garment. Right?
So the Kohen and the Kohen Gadol did not wear tzitzis.
Correct.
When you're doing the Vodah.
Not a yarmulke either, by the way. They have the turban.
Right.
Even the Sikhs copied us with the turban.
Yeah.
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
Everybody copied us.
Okay. So and then the thing that we're going to discuss is tefillin, which we'll have a conversation whether he wore tefillin or he didn't wear tefillin. But tzitzis would definitely be a problem. Okay, he didn't wear tzitzis. Okay, so let's.
You were commanded. Everyone was commanded.
If you wear a 4-cornered garment, you wear tzitzis. If you are not wearing a 4-cornered garment, and none of these were 4-cornered garments,
But the breastplate could have had 4 corners on them.
the breastplate did not. Well, the breastplate is not a garment.
Or the thing that they're trying to
Right.
war with the 12 tribes.
That's it. Yeah, that does not. Even though that has 4 corners, not a garment, so therefore it doesn't get tzitzis on it. Okay, so let's go. We are 6 lines down from the top. 19 A1, we presume. Yud Testament Aleph. Tanan Hasam, we learned in a Mishnah over there, which is in Eruvin. Kohen Shaloka Be'etzba'o, a Kohen who has a wound on his finger, right? He pokes himself with the knife, right? So then, Korech Aleha Gemi. So he can put a gemi onto this wound. A gemi is some kind of a reed grass that they would put onto their wounds, and it would have a healing property to it. I don't know, like an aloe or something like that, right? Those are the things that and definitely helps. But mikdash, he could do that in the Beis Hamikdash, aval lo b'medina, but not outside of the Beis Hamikdash. The reason why is because this Gemara is in Maseches Eruvin, they're talking about Shabbos, and on Shabbos we have a prohibition, a rabbinic prohibition against doing anything that will help you medically. So therefore, taking medicines on Shabbos is problematic, right? If you have a medical condition, obviously everything that's life and death, you have to do, right? Anything that is going to, you have certain illnesses which will cause you to have to lie down, then potentially you could take those. But see your local Hilchos Shabbos Halachas Svarim for details, because there's not a Hilchos Shabbos in medical shiur, but the point is that generally speaking, there exists a rabbinic commandment. Don't you do anything for medicinal purposes. The concern was we might grind new medications on Shabbos, and grinding is a Torah prohibition. So yes, and even though we don't grind our own medications nowadays, the rule still applies, and we don't take medications generally on Shabbos. I say generally, right? If somebody has antibiotics, they have to take their antibiotics. If somebody has migraines and they feel one coming on, and they got to take when somebody has concussions and they've got to take their medications and things, take them, right? Don't not take them for those purposes. But if somebody is and health medications, let's say vitamins. I just took a look, I was reading up on that, taking those sorts of things. Those are not for sick people, so that might not be included. In any event, many medications don't take. In any event, this is the point. You cannot take this reed grass, which has medicinal purposes, and wrap it on your finger, because that has medical help. But in the Beis Hamikdash, we didn't have to worry about rabbinic prohibitions. So therefore, because we're considered to be very careful, the Kohanim are very careful in the Beis Hamikdash, rabbinic prohibitions were not enacted in the Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, in the Beis Hamikdash, he could put this on, but not in the Medina.
It's like a separation between the skin.
Well, this is going to be on his finger, so there's nothing that's going to separate between his finger and his clothes. It's an issue of whether it's an additional garment.
Right, but how about could he touch the
and now he's going to touch his korban. So we're going to discuss all of those issues, right? So okay. Vim lahotzi mimena dam. However, if he's going to get blood, if he's trying to get blood, squeeze blood out of it, right? He pricks his finger because I don't know whether he's got some kind of I don't know whether diabetic would be a good reason why somebody would take blood out. That's a good answer, right? That would be a good modern answer. Back then, it could be if you had some kind of like a swollen finger or something, or a blister or something like that. So then kan v'kan also doing that on Shabbos is prohibited either way. That is a Torah prohibition of making a chabura, and so therefore Torah prohibitions, of course, are prohibited in the Beis Hamikdash just as they are any place else. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Brei de Rabbi Chia, Rabbi Yehuda the son of Rabbi Chia says, Lo shanu ella gemi. That is only when we're talking about doing these reed grasses. Aval tziltzul katan. But if you're going to use a small bandage, so then have a yisur begadim, that's adding a garment to the 4 garments that the Kohen would wear. That's not allowed. And Rabbi Yochanan disagrees. He says, Lo amar yisur begadim el b'makom begadim. The only prohibition, he says, according to Rabbi Yochanan, that adding a garment is a problem is if it's a garment in the place where you normally wear garments, i.e. tzitzis, for example.
Sorry. Right? Where it says, kan v'kan, in terms of the dam. But we did bloodletting rituals.
Not on Shabbos.
Oh, it's only
Shabbos. This is Shabbos, right? Okay, on Shabbos. Yeah, good point. Okay, but Rabbi Yochanan says that adding extra garments only a problem if you're putting them on in a place where you normally wear the garments. As you see, his entire body is covered, but not his hands, not his face. So therefore, adding a garment on your hand or your face, putting a bandage on your finger, would not be a problem according to Rabbi Yochanan. Aval, however, shalo ben makom begadim, if it's not in a place where you wear garments, lo have yisr, it's not extra garments, and you're okay to wear that. So, v'tepok mishum chatzitza. Now we have Brian's question. Why shouldn't it be a problem? Because we have a chatzitza. Chatzitza means a something that blocks between 2 things, right? A chatzitza is blocked, in this case, blocking between your hand and the korban that you're doing, the service that you're performing. And we had learned that nothing can block between the Kohen and the service that he's doing. If he has to use the service, he has to do the service with his right hand, he can't have a bandage on his finger which blocks between his hand and the knife that he's holding, for example. So the answer is bismol. The blemish is on the cut is on his left hand, right? Because most of the service is done with the right hand. So getting something cut on your left hand, putting a bandage on your left hand wouldn't be as big an issue. Inami shalom makom avoda, or else the blemish is in a place that he doesn't have to do the service with. I don't know, his pinky finger or something like that, where it's not going to interfere with the service that he's doing. Upliga de Rava. This argues with what Rava says. Damar Rava says, Amar Rav Chisda, he says in the name of Rav Chisda, b'makom begadim. He says, not like Rabbi Yochanan, he says that if it's in the location where the garments are, afilu nima achas potzetzes, even one thread is going to be a blockage. That's no good at all, man. We're not talking about a loose thread. We're not talking about a within the garment itself that it came out slightly. We're talking about a loose thread. So if you even have one loose thread, that's gonna block. That's a chatzitza problem between the skin and the garment that the Kohen is wearing. Shalo b'makom begadim. If it's not where the garment is supposed to go, i.e., hands, face, shalosh al shalosh chotzetzos, then the garment, if it has significance, 3 finger breadths by 3 finger breadths, right? A little bit like I don't know how many centimeters, like, an inch by an inch or so. I don't know how many centimeters that is. Pachos mikan eina chotzetzos, then less than that is okay. So if you have a small little bandage, okay, but the larger bandage already is going to be a problem. So that is ad Rabbi Yochanan vade pligi. So for sure, Rava is definitely arguing with Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan said that that's fine. Anything is fine if it's not where the garments are, right? Ad Rabbi Yehuda braid Rabbi Chia mi lema de pligi. But is he arguing with Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia, who talked about the little bandage that he could wear in his finger, but he can't wear the little bandage on his finger, but he can wear the reed, right? So is he arguing with him? So the answer is shani tziltzul cotton. He says the little bandage is different dechoshev, because the little bandage, even though it's smaller than 3 by 3 fingers, is nevertheless significant, right? There's 2 different issues, right? We've had this issue when we're talking about eating an ant or something like that. When you've got something of significance, the size is less important, right? So, to put a little something on your hand that's of insignificant size is not a chatzitza. If you get like a string, somebody's got a thread on their hand, that's insignificant. But if you've got a bandage, even if it's less than 3 by 3, maybe that's also going to be a problem according to Rava, and he would agree with Rabbi Yehuda. Lishnach Rina, another version of this teaching. Amri law, that we said about it, that Amar Rabbi Yehuda braid the Rabbi Chia, that Rabbi Yehuda said in Rabbi Chia, Lo shana ela gemi. The only time that you're allowed to put something on your hand, if you're a Kohen, is if it's reed grass. Okay, because then it's small and insignificant. However, a small bandage is going to be a blockage, and you cannot wear it. Rabbi Yochanan says, Lo amru chatzitza b'pachos mishalosh al shalosh, ela b'makom begadim. And now Rabbi Yochanan, we change his shita a little bit. Now Rabbi Yochanan is saying that it's only going to be a 3 by 3 is only going to be a blockage if it's in the location where the garments are being worn. Aval shelo b'makom begadim shalosh shalosh chotzetzos. He says if it's less than 3 by 3 under the garments, he says then it's going to block. But when it's not where the garments are, so then sholosh chotzetzos, then 3 by 3 is going to block. Pachos mikan, but less than that.
Where the garments are.
Right. If it's not where the garments are, then you need 3 by 3, which is similar to what we said before. Right. But now pachos mikan, if it's less than that, inu chotzetzos. Right, v'hainu de Rava, but that's going to be the same shita as Rava, Amar Rav Chisda. So that's where Rava and Bar Rav Chisda. That's what Rava is going to say. So Amar Rav Chisda, lema pliga ad Rabbi Yehuda braid Rabbi Chia. Let's say he argues with Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Chia. Shani tziltzul katan dechashev. He says no. Maybe everyone would agree that a tziltzul katan, a small bandage, is going to be important. Ul Rabbi Yochanan might irya gemi leshma inan tziltzul katan. Then according to Rabbi Yochanan, why is he telling us that a gemi is permissible? Why shouldn't he tell us that even a tziltzul katan is permissible, because he holds it's less than 3 by 3? It's not so milsa agav urche kamashma is telling us both things. Degemi masi, that he's telling us that the wound is healed by reed grass. So it's a good idea to put that on. So he's just telling you side issue, right? You can wear that reed grass and that's okay. And it's not going to be a problem because of the rabbinic prohibition in the Beis Hamikdash, but will be a problem outside the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, good. By Rava asked the following question. Nichnasa lo ruach bebigdo. Let's say wind blows underneath the he's got this big robe, right? He's got the robe on.
The air is a chatzitza.
That's the question. Well, is it a chatzitza? It's not a chatzitza because there's nothing there, right? But do the garments have to be against his body? Right? And it's not. So that's the question. Mahu. Al bisaro ba'inon v'holeka. It says in the pasuk that he has to wear these on his flesh. And if he's got wind blowing underneath, then it's not against his body. Or that's just the way that they're worn. So that's not anything. Okay, so we don't have an answer for that one. We're gonna have a few that we don't have answers to. Kina mahu shetachotz. What about if he's got a louse? Louse is the singular of lice. So we're talking about not a lousy person, right? Let's say there's a louse, one bug, right, that's on him. So is that a chatzitza? Huh? It's pachos mishalosh shel shalosh, but it's makom begodim. And we've got an issue, because this is not, that issue, right, we want to be able to make sure that we distinguish between the issues, because we keep flip-flopping back and forth. The issue of shalosh shel shalosh was a yisr begodim issue, but then there's also chatzitza problem, right? This kina, the question is chatzitza. Not a extra garment. It's whether the bug blocks between his skin and the garment.
Well, it probably is considered it's considered chashuv.
So let's see what he says. So mesa lo tibailach. If it's dead, if it's a dead bug, devadai chaitza, then that's for sure a blockage, right? Because like we said, even a little thread is going to be a blockage. We said that before, right? But malkum begodim, that's going to be in the way.
What's chatzitza?
A blockage, right? Between the skin and barrier. Like the word mechitza, that's exactly right. Mechitza, chatzitza, same word. Now, mi amrinon, do we say kaven de asa ve'ozla rabbi sahi velo chaitza? Do we say, look, this is, lice were an issue back then, right? So therefore, it comes and it goes, and that's just the way that these bugs are. So it's not really a chatzitza because that's normal course of events. Oh, Dilma kaven de kapida lo chaitza. Or look, the guy doesn't want it on his body. He sees a bug on him and flicking it off. So therefore, it does block. So that's a good question. We leave that one. Next one that we're not going to have an answer from. Fire. What about dirt? Mahu sheyachotz. So dirt, does that block? So afar vadechai, it's for sure dirt blocks, right? Nobody wants to have a big piece of mud on their body, right? That's for sure in the way.
Because you can get worms on your body after that.
Well, worms were a separate issue. We talked about the bugs before. Now we're just talking about the dirt, not because of the worms. We just got some. So Ella avak afar mahu. The question is a smudge. We're talking about light dirt, right? We're not talking about a big, obviously he's got a big thing of mud on him. That's a chatzitza. Mm-hmm. But if he's got a little smudge of dirt on him, is that a chatzitza or not? That's a question. Beis hashechi. Okay, what about if you've got a loose sleeve? Okay, so we've got these garments and we see that they were tailored quite close. They don't have very loose sleeves, right? What if you've got a bigger, looser sleeve, right? Let's say the armpit is down here, right? Let's say he's got a nice loose sleeve. Is that a problem? So, Mahu sheyachutz al bisaro, but mahu sheyachutz, is that going to be a chatzitza? The airspace that's created in between, is that a chatzitza?
I'm guessing no answer.
Right. Good. You're getting the hang of this one. Al bisaro ba'inon, it has to be on his flesh. The haleka, and there's not, right? It's not on him. O dilma derech levish bakach. That's just the way that you wear the garment, so it's not that big a deal. Hichnis yodo letoch cheko mahu. What if he sticks his hand, right? He's warming himself up and he sticks his hand inside, right? Now there's no room, it's not like it's open anywhere. Yeah. So I'm not exactly sure where he's doing it. I don't know. Maybe he's putting his arms like you see the quarterbacks, like they put tuck their hands in their sleeves like this, maybe, right? If it's cold outside.
Or like one of those what are they called? Right. Like the Asian robe things.
Right, but they don't. But see, there's no opening in the front, right? No. Right. So this you can't stick it. It's not like Napoleon or something like that. He can't do it. The Kohen Gadol makes more sense, right? Or maybe he tucks it under his belt, right? Maybe that's what's going on. Maybe he tucks his hands in his belt, right? What happens there? Can you do the avoda while you've got your hand like that, warming up? So he says, what about that? So. Mahu, gufo michayitz or lo? Is his body an interspersed blocking between the garments or not? Okay, good question. Nima, mahu shetachotz. What about a hair? Is that going to be we said a little hair, a little thread is going to be, right? But this is going to be like the seam of the garment coming out a little bit, right? Now, it's not like, just a drop sticking out. Now, it's like the garment, there's no seams on the garments, by the way they wove them, there's no seams, right? But nevertheless, you can have a thread coming out a little bit. Is that Nima Vadai Chaitza? Is it for sure this thread is going to for sure be in a block? Ella Nima Miduldelis Mahu. So he says for sure a real thread is. But what about a thread that's a little bit loose from the garment itself? Is that going to be a blockage? So Boi Marba Ravashi. It's the best to avoid it, right? So because if you're in these situations, and the Kohen is going to wind up creating a circumstance of suffix, a doubt whether his korban is valid or not. So, that creates problems, right? Creates problems for everybody because you can't redo some of these korbanos, and then you have to, some of them you can redo, but people have to pay for it. So best to double check, right? Not do these things. Ravashi yotzo sa'aro bebigdo mahu. So he says, what about if body hair comes out, right? And it's under the garments. So what about that? Se'aro kegufo dami, is his hair like his body? So we're presuming, I guess, that his body, when he sticks his hands in, that doesn't bother us anymore. Or maybe it's because it's detached that it creates a bigger problem. Olav kegufo dami, or is it not like his body, and that would be a problem? So we have another question there. Boy, Rabbi Zera asked the question. Tefillin. Let's say the Kohen wants to wear tefillin. Mahu shiyachotzu. So is that a chatzitza? Now, as far as armed tefillin goes, that for sure you can't wear, right? Yeah. That's in the makom begodim. He can't put his armed tefillin on. The question's going to be, he's got some space, right? He's got a turban on, so can he get the head tefillin on?
Are we
right?
talking about any Kohen or the Kohen Gadol?
Any.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Kohen Gadol would have the
tzitz, and we're going to talk about that too.
Right.
So
Where the tzitz is worn.
there's no way that they were able to roll up their sleeve and
Can't roll up your sleeve.
you can.
Right.
Because then the garment is not being worn properly.
Right.
And then if you roll your sleeve down, then the tefillin is in the way.
Right.
So you can't put on arm tefillin. And the question is, well, okay, if you can't put on tefillin, so then was he putting the head tefillin on? They're two separate mitzvos, right? So you can put on head tefillin without putting on arm tefillin.
Really?
Yeah. So let's say you have somebody, chas v'shalom, has no arms, right? Somebody has no arms, chas v'shalom, could still wear head tefillin.
Why do you
Right.
put your headphones on last, before the arms?
Why do we put the head tefillin? So we're going to hold off questions on tefillin, right? But we would put our head tefillin on, then the shalrosh, and then back to the shel yad. Yes, but okay, let's answer the questions about.
Time.
Yeah, I want to make sure that I limit the side conversation. Otherwise, I will wind up not getting all the way through. We wind up doing that. Okay, so now, tefillin, head tefillin. That's the question. Aliba demand amar laila lavzman tefillin hu loti boilach. Now, there is an opinion that says you're not allowed to wear tefillin at night. And in practice, that's how we hold anyway, right? You can't wear tefillin at night. Laila is not the time for tefillin. So then there's no question. Then for sure, that's a problem. Because kaven de laila chaitzi, yom nami chaitzi. Then you have to take a look at your tefillin and say, clearly, tefillin, the only reason why we might think you can get away with it is because it's a mitzvah and it's not an extra beged, and so you can get away with it. If at night, there's no mitzvah to wear it, and you put on your tefillin at night, that would for sure be extra because you're not allowed to do that. Then what's the difference between nighttime and daytime? So then it's an extra garment. So therefore, if night isn't the time you're allowed to wear tefillin, then there's no question. You're not allowed to put tefillin on during the day or at any time. They just presume that once you can't do it now, you can't do it anytime. It's always extra. Kiti boilach, the question is Lamanda Amar Laila's man tefillin. According to the opinion that says that nighttime can be a time that you wear tefillin. The question is there. My mitzvah de gufei chayitz is a mitzvah on your body, a chatzitza. Does it block? Oh, lo, or not, or does it not? Okay, so now, and now this is important to note, even though the Gemara uses the term chatzitza, right? This means that Rashi goes back and forth on this term. He goes chotzetz at this point, then later on he switches to yisur begodim. And so it's an interesting sort of a quibble in Rashi to be able to figure out what he's talking about. We're going to go the easy route because it's Daf Yomi. So we'll try to go the easy route, and we will interpret it as Tosfos does, that the issue here is it an extra garment? Right? We know the Kohen's only allowed to wear these four. Putting on the tefillin, is that an extra garment or not? Right? The chatzitza issue aside. Okay. Even though the Gemara uses the word chatzitza, that's what Rashi picks up on. So if you want to go into it later, I'm sure that somebody makes a comment on it. Okay, now. Igalgel milsa umata lekami Rabbi Ami. Apparently, this was subject to a lot of conversation. People were asking this question, going back and forth. Now, it's interesting to note that, of course, all this conversation is going on during the times of the Gemara, several hundred years after the Beis HaMikdash was already destroyed, so nobody had any experience taking a look at a Kohen and knowing whether they were allowed to wear tefillin or not. That would have simply answered it, right? Yeah. But nobody had ever met a Kohen who had worked in the Beis HaMikdash. Nobody was around during the times of the Beis HaMikdash, where hundreds of years later, it's like asking us, how did George Washington tie his shoes, right? Nobody would know the answer, right? So it's like hundreds of years later. So nobody knew. Right, so they're having this conversation.
Right sock, left sock, right shoe, left shoe, right sock. That's how we did it.
So Amar Lei. So Rav Ami, finally the conversation got to Rav Ami, and he says, Talmud Aruch hu biyadenu. We have a long-standing tradition, right? We have a long-standing tradition that tefillin chotzitzos. So apparently they had handed it down from generation to generation. Tefillin are an extra beged, cannot wear tefillin. Okay? Meisvei, we ask the following question against that. Kohanim ba'avodasam uleviyim beduchanon v'Yisrael b'ma'amadon, right? The Kohanim, when they are involved in their service, doing the korbanos. The Leviim are standing on the platform, they're singing their songs, and the Yisraelim they had people who were appointed as representatives of the community to observe the community offerings that were being done on their behalf. So these people who are standing and doing that, Turin minat tefillah uminat tefillin, they're busy. So they don't have to daven Shemona Esrei, and they don't have to put on tefillin. Because of the rule, osek b'mitzvah pater min mitzvah. When you are involved in one mitzvah, you are exempt from doing another mitzvah. So therefore, they're servicing in the Beis HaMikdash. They're serving in the Beis HaMikdash. They cannot, for a moment, take their attention off of what it is that they are doing. So they don't take a break for davening and putting on tefillin. Now, my lav im hinichon einan chotzitzos. What's the point here? Osek b'mitzvah pater min mitzvah is the point. Since they're doing a mitzvah, they can't wear them. That doesn't say that the problem is that if they put them on, it's going to ruin their garments, right? That would seem to be a whole different issue. And certainly that wouldn't be the issue by Yisraelim. So therefore they answer, lo, im hinichon chotzitzos. No, we're really saying that would also be a problem, right? If they did put the tefillin on, that would also be a problem for doing their service. Well, ihachi, if that's true, pturim, what does that mean? They're exempt from wearing the tefillin, exempt from davening Shemona Esrei. Asurim miboile. It should say that it's prohibited for them to put on their tefillin, because it's actually bad to put on your tefillin if it's going to ruin the service, right? It's not only that you're exempt from doing it, it's also bad if you do it. So, kevan de'ika leviim v'Yisrael lo masni lo aser. The answer is because only the Kohanim have a problem of a prohibition, right, in that list, because they're wearing their garments. The Leviim are not wearing special garments. They could be wearing their tefillin while they're singing. The Yisraelim could tefillin while they're standing there, but since their job starts before it gets light outside, they haven't put them on, and they don't have a time to take a break in order to put them on, so therefore they're not wearing them. And that's the only reason they're not wearing them. They're exempt, that's why they're not wearing them, but it's not a prohibition, and you cannot, since the list is all together, can't say the word prohibited, even though the Kohanim are in fact prohibited.
Would it not be an issue that you have to have your mind on the tefillin at all times?
Yes.
During the service?
Yes.
Unless it's like Shemona Esrei.
But that seems to not bother us so much because, well, even nowadays where our tefillin are not where we take our minds off of the tefillin, we definitely have Torah reading. We don't take our tefillin off when Torah reading comes along because we figure even though that's not part of the Shemona Esrei, we're not taking our minds off our tefillin when we're doing something otherwise positive. And I've had Rebbes that right after davening, we go right away to a halacha seder and they wear their tefillin for the halacha seder before going to breakfast. And then there's the yeshivas there's a yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael where they wear their tefillin all morning, and so they all day. Even the kids are wearing their tefillin all morning while they're learning. So it seems to be that while yes, we definitely don't want to take our minds off, I don't think that doing the avoda in the Beis HaMikdash would be considered something you'd have to take your tefillin off for. Breakfast would be probably, but using the washroom for definitely, but not for doing the service. Okay, so now. Mishum hachi tana pturim. That's why it says the word pater. They're exempt because there's a list, right? Even though the Kohanim are prohibited. Veha tanya, but we learned in a brisa, im hinichon einon chotzitzos, right? If the Kohen puts on the tefillin, they don't become a chatzitza. They're not extra garments, and the service is kosher. So lo kasha. So that's not a contradiction. Had de yad, had de rosh. This is the distinction between the yad and the rosh. The yad is going to be a problem, but not the rosh. My shna de yad. Why is that a problem by the hand tefillin? Dichsiv, the pasuk says yilbash al bisaro, because there's actually a chatzitza problem by the hand tefillin, because the garment has to be on your body if you're a kohen. So then shalo yehe davar chutzitz beino libsaro, you can't have anything between your body and the garment, so you can't put on tefillin, and definitely not tzitzis, even though the Gemara doesn't bring it up here. That's why we started at the beginning of the show and said definitely we're not wearing tzitzis, right? The Kohanim. Derosh nami, but then the head tefillin also is going to get in the way, because the pasuk says v'samta mitznefes al rosho. You've got this turban on your head. How are you supposed to get the tefillin on if you've got a turban on? So Tana, so we learned that se'aro hayanira bein tzitz l'mitznefes. The Kohen Gadol, his hair, if he had hair, was visible between the turban and the tzitz. And the tzitz was worn across his forehead here, and the turban was back here. So this part of his head, where his hair was visible. And so therefore, that's where the tefillin goes. He must have had a small pair of tefillin, right? He didn't have he did not have a good Lubavitch set of tefillin that was like big like this, right? He had like the small, and by the way, it's a Kohen, a big, huge Kohen Gadol head, right? That could be. But if you do, by the way, like we nowadays are so used to having these big, nice boxes of tefillin. Yeah. If you go to like Israel Museum or whatever, you look back at picture tefillins all those days, they were way smaller. They didn't have the machines and the presses that we have nowadays in order to make very thick cow's hides into tefillin, they were made out of much thinner skins of animals, and they were less durable. I believe in my day still, like you hardly see these small ones anymore. When I was being in bar mitzvah, some of the guys would have the little small ones that they would, right? You have them, right? So the problems with them is.
They have spread tefillin in the locker. They have small ones as well.
So they were small. So they would get those little small ones, and I remember all over Rabbi telling us, don't get those if you become bar mitzvah. Why? Because they are made out of thin skins. So if you wear them every day, which you should, eventually they do get out of shape, right? They start to twist and curve and things like that, right? Wear and tear, right? The ones that I got my same pair from my bar mitzvah, which has been a few years, and they're pretty straight. So that's the advantage, worth the money, worth the investment. Okay. So in any event, so now there was this rule. So therefore, shesham manichin tefillin. That's where the Kohen Gadol could put it on his tefillin, and for sure the regular Kohen didn't have the tzitz at all in the way. So apparently the turban was not worn like the Sikhs, like all over their whole head, but it was apparently like the yeshiva boys wear their hats, right? Where the yeshiva boys wear their hats, leaning back so they can get the tefillin in.
And the knot. Will they be able to get the knot in the proper place?
And they have to get the knot in the proper place.
You gotta have to look higher up or lower down.
You can't have your tefillin past here, so you can't put it too much lower down, right? But this whole section of your head is kosher for tefillin. So
yeah, I was going to say, usually you wear it at your head, at your hairline.
Right. Yeah. Or where it was.
If you have it.
Right. Okay. Yes. Don't worry. We got 18 minutes. The weather is going to hold out. Okay. Good. Mechusar Kippurim. What about a circumstance if the next Kohen that we're going to talk about is a Kohen who is missing? He has not brought his sacrifices in the morning. Minolan, how do I know that he cannot do the service? Amar Rav Huna, Amar Kra. Rav Huna says, the pasuk says, "V'chiper aleha hakohen v'tahera." The Kohen shall atone for him, and he will be purified. Tahara mikal shehi temea. So that means that he becomes v'tahera. He becomes tar. When he completes the sacrifice to do, I think in this case it's for his becoming for tsaras. No, legabe yoledis. This by a woman who's given birth, right? She becomes tahira when she finishes her sacrifice. That means before that she's not tahira, which means that it will be a tumah problem. And we already learned before that a kohen who's tameh cannot do the service. This ends volume 1 of the Mesifta. And we move into volume 2 of the Mesifta, if you're using the Mesifta at home. Okay. Seamless transition, only the pros. Veshalo rachutz yadayim v'raglayim. The next thing is a Kohen who has not washed his hands and feet. Washing hands and feet is a problem if you don't wash your hands and feet. Also, chukah mi mechusar begadim. That is because their word chukah is written by washing the hands and feet, and the word chukah is written by not having the garments, which we had talked about on Friday. And so since both, we have a gzeira shava there. So that's the source there. Tana Rabbanan, our rabbis learn. Kohen gadol shelo taval v'lo shelo kidesh bein beged lebeged on Yom Kippur. If the Kohen Gadol does not wash his hands or go to the mikvah between each of the garments, bein avoda la'avoda, and each of the services, va'avad avoda so, and he does the service on Yom Kippur without going to the mikvah or washing his hands in between, kshera, it is kosher. Still okay. Now, the echad Kohen Gadol, v'echad Kohen Hedyot, but a Kohen Gadol or a regular Kohen, shelo kidesh yodav v'raglav shachris, if he doesn't wash his hands and feet at the beginning of the day, v'avad avoda so, and he does the service psula, then that's no good. So the first washing of the day is critical. All the other ones on Yom Kippur are not as critical. Amar le Rav Asi Rabbi Yochanan. Rav Asi says Rabbi Yochanan Mechti. 1 second. Take a look at what it says by the Kohen Gadol in Yom Kippur. It says Chamesh tfilos v'asara kiddushin deoraisa. There are 5 times that he has to go to the mikvah, and 10 times that he has to wash his hands. He has to wash his hands before and after he changes the garments. So that's 10 hand washings and 5 going to the mikvah. Those are all written in the Torah. The chukah ksiv behu, and it says the word chukah there too. So therefore, li'akvo, which should mean that they are all required. If you don't do them, it should ruin the Yom Kippur avoda. Amar le. So he says back to him, Amar kra, the pasuk says, ule ve'sham. And then you shall wear them, to tell me that what is it that the word chukah is talking about as critical? Levisha ma'akeves ve'ein davar acher ma'akev. Only the wearing of the garments is critical, not the going to the mikvah is critical. So hevo panov. So he says, so his face started to glow. He was so happy with that great answer. That answers the problem. That's a wonderful answer. But he says, Amar le, vav a'ufta ksivilach. He says, don't get so excited by my answer. My answer wasn't that good. And my answer is basically the equivalent of a vav written on a log. Now, that sounds like a weird thing to say, but if you've ever seen a log, it has bark all along the outside of it, and a vav is a straight line. So if you carve a vav into the side of a log, you will not see it. It's not recognizable. His point is, my answer is lacking of substance. He's critical of his own answer. And he says, Ihachi, because if I was true, that safra nami, then the morning washing would also be not necessary. Because if you're telling me that all 10 hand washings and all 5 dunks in the mikvah are not critical, then none of them should be critical. Why do we have this brisa that tells us that the hand washing in the morning for the Kohen Gadol is critical? So Amar Chizkiah says, because that's from a different pasuk. The pasuk says, "V'haiso lehem chok olam lo ulezaro ledorosam." It shall be a law for him. Chok, again, there's the word, forever for him and his children for all generations. Davar ha'akev bizaro me'akev bo. That tells me that which of the hand washings is going to be critical? The one that is critical by other kohanim, and we know that other kohanim have to wash their hands and feet in the morning. Therefore, the Kohen Gadol, even though the rest of the hand washings and the rest of the mikveh dunkings on Yom Kippur are not critical for the service, the hand washing that everybody else has to do is critical to him, and that is the first one. Davar she'ena ma'akev bezaro ein ma'akev bo, the ones that are not critical to him, to the other kohanim are not critical to him for the Yom Kippur service.
Why is it? It's not necessarily his seed.
His children, the Kohen Gadol's children, Aaron and his children, right? The children are the non-Kohen Gadol kohanim.
Right. No,
so
but besides Aaron Cohen,
anybody, correct. They don't have to be his children, but yes. But this pasuk happens to be talking about the Kohen Gadol. Rabbi Yonasan Amar Mehach. Rabbi Yonasan says, no, it's a separate pasuk. It says like this: V'rachtu mimenu Moshe ve'Aaron uvanov. Right, that Moshe and Aaron and his children will wash their hands from this kior. Davar ma'akev bebanav ma'akev bo. This tells us that the Aaron and his children have the same rule. That which is critical as a hand washing for Aaron and his children is critical to Aaron. To Aaron and his children is critical to Aaron. So davar she'ena ma'akev bebanav, a hand washing which is not critical to Aaron's children, i.e., they don't do the Yom Kippur service, also is not critical to his. Is not critical to the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur as well, right? So Ein Makav doesn't hold him back. So Rabbi Yonasan says, "My time lo Omar mi Chizkiah." Why doesn't he like Chizkiah's answer? So Amar Lach, he says to you, "Hahu ledoros hu dichsiv," right? So he says that is just telling us that this is the rule for all generations. The Torah tells us that he has to wash his hands for all generations, not necessarily to tell you that on Yom Kippur he doesn't, that he has to wash his hands. This is telling us that for all generations there's a requirement for Kohanim to wash their hands in the Kior. Ve'idach, the other one, my time Lo Omar Mehai, why doesn't he use that, the other pasuk? He uses that pasuk about the Kohanim, Aaron and his children at the Kior for a different purpose for Rabbi Yossi's teaching. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina, Dama Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina says, Kol Kior, She'ein bo kidei lekadesh arba Kohanim imenu. If you have a washing utensil in the Beis HaMikdash and it does not have enough water in it to wash 4 Kohanim's hands, Ein mekadshim bo, you cannot use that to wash. You need to be able to hold enough water for 4 Kohanim. How do you know? Aaron, his sons, there were 2 at the time, and Moshe, 4 people. So you need at least enough water in that kior to wash for 4. Shenamar, pasuk says, v'rachtu mimenu Moshe v'Aaron ubanov. Okay, Tana Rabbanan. Ketzad mitzvahs kiddush. How did they wash their hands in the Beis HaMikdash? Meniach yado hayemanis al gabe raglo hayemanis. He would put his right hand on his right foot. V'yado asmalas al gabe raglo asmalas, and his left hand on his left foot. Umekadesh, and then they would pour the water over the hands and feet, hand and foot. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda says, no. Maniach shtei yadav zu agavzu, put one hand on top of the other. Ve'al gabe shtei raglav zu agabe zu, and then put his 2 feet, and put that over his 2 feet, one standing on top of the other. Umekadesh, and that's how you would do it. So, like, stack up your hands and feet. Amru lo, they said to him, ha plug sa, yef sharlososkin. He says, what kind of answer is that? It's impossible. You can't do that. Stand 2 feet on top of the other, hands on top of the hands. I think I could, but I wouldn't try because the Gemara says it's danger. You cannot. You'll fall over, right? You can't balance that way. So not possible. So shopper come relay. So their answer is a good point they're making, right? It's not. You can't stand foot on top of foot, hand on top of hand. Amar of Yosef v'chavero misai oser. Yosef says his friend holds him up, right? You get a friend to balance him. That's all. You can't stand that way by yourself. But if you've got a friend to hold you, no problem. What is the point of contention between the two of them? If you are standing and leaning on something, that is the question, and that has practical halachic implications. If you are davening with a stender and davening Shemona Esrei and you're leaning on that stender, so then you're not standing, right? Because you're leaning on something else. So so he says that's the difference, according to the opinion that says, remember that all the avoda has to be standing. So therefore, if they're leaning on another Kohen, that's not standing according to one opinion. So therefore they can't do it the way that Rabbi Yehuda suggests. Amalei Rav Sama Breder of Ashi, or some Breder of Ashi says L'Ravina, V'leisev. So why doesn't he just sit down? What's the big deal? So V'leisev Meisev L'Kadish. Wash your hands while sitting down. So the answer is Amar Kro. The pasuk says L'Shareis. He has to serve V'Sheres Mu'umadhu, and we know that all service in the Beis HaMikdash is done standing. So that's not a solution. Tana Rabbana Rabbi Zorn. Kiddush Yodov V'Raglav Bayom Ein Tzarich L'Kadish B'Layla. Another big issue for us, especially if you are going to stay up all night learning on Hoshana Rabbah or at any other night, if you have so inclined, right? If you wash your hands during the day, you don't need to wash again at night. The Kohanim were burning the fats on the Mizbeach overnight. That is okay. You can burn all the fats overnight. Balayla, but if you wash your hands at night, tzarich l'kadish bayom, you need to wash again in the morning. So,
because when you're sleeping, it's like
correct. But this isn't even if you're sleeping. Right. This is telling us that even if you don't sleep, comes the morning, and immediately you have to wash again. So we hold that it winds up becoming a suffix issue.
Yeah, so I thought it was
correct. So we wash and we don't make a bracha if you stay up all night on Shavuos.
Yeah,
right? Excellent point, right?
Every morning you have tumah on your hands. That's why you have to wash.
That's correct. So the tumah, so the issue, if you read in the Mishnah Berurah, tumah comes from 2 different potential sources. One is touching someplace while you're asleep. One is that the tumah automatically comes once the morning comes. And so therefore, if you go to sleep, you've covered both bases. If you go to sleep during the day, but you are not asleep overnight, let's say you take a nap in the afternoon, you wash your hands, no bracha. Okay, same kind of a thing, right? So if you go to sleep for a half hour, right? If you are going to go to sleep, if you don't go to sleep overnight, then the morning, so then you wash your hands without a bracha. You only wash your hands with a bracha if you fall asleep and wake up in the morning.
Why is it if you stay up all night, you still have to wash your hands without a bracha?
Because of this issue, right? That we say once comes the morning, you have to wash again. The washing that you do at night doesn't help you. Okay?
That's why.
So, Divrei Rebbe, that's what Rebbe says. Shahaya Rebbe Rabbi says, Lina mo'eles bekidush yadayim v'raglayim. that he says that lina, the issue of lina, is going to be an issue for washing hands. Lina is the prohibition for any sacrificial product to go through the night. So therefore, once the morning comes, lina, the prohibition of lina kicks in, and so now you have another hand washing to do. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon says, "Ein lina mo'elas b'kiddush yadayim raglayim." He says, no, right? It's not an issue with washing hands and feet. He holds that you're fine. According to Rabbi Shimon, you could go for 10 days straight, wash your hands once, as long as you don't go to sleep. You can continue to work in the Beis HaMikdash straight. Well, even if you leave the Beis HaMikdash, potential problems too, right? As long as if you are going to stay in the Beis HaMikdash working constantly, you don't have to keep washing your hands every time. Doesn't matter. Tanya idach. We have another brisa. Hayomedu makriv al gabi mizbeach kol halayla. If you're standing working on the mizbeach all night long, liora when it comes daytime, tan kiddush yadayim raglayim. Divrei Rabbi. Rabbi says that you got to wash your hands and feet. Rabbi Elazar Shimon Omer. Rabbi Elazar Shimon says kevan shekiddush yadav raglav mitchilas avoda. Once you started washing, when you first got there, maybe the guy showed up in the middle of the night burning fats and things. Even now, 10 days from now. He does not have to rewash his hands and feet. I need this as well. If I had learned the first case, that maybe what's going on is that's where Rebbe says, okay, well, he stopped doing one service, he's going to do a different service, okay, now he's got to rewash his hands. But here, if he's continuously doing service, he's standing on his back doing service continuously, then maybe he agrees with Rabbi Shimon, there's no hefsek, so let him just keep on going. And if we had learned the issue of that, even if there's no hefsek, then he still requires you to wash your hands. Maybe that's what Rabbi Elazar Shimon says, since there's no hefsek in this service, you're doing the service the whole time, and your mind never leaves staying kodesh, maybe that's why he says you don't have to wash your hands again come the morning. But in the other case where he stopped doing one service, so then Ema Modi Le Rebbe maybe agrees with Rebbe, so the answer is it does not matter. Either way, the issue is morning, the issue is not stopping and taking a break in service. My time of the Rebbe, why does Rebbe say that you have to wash in the morning anymore? Dichsiv, the pasuk says, Begish Tam. It says when you come close to the base, whenever you come close, that coming close is the only thing that is required for you to be able to do the service. If you have not washed your hands, then you are problematic because you're not ready to come close to doing the service. My time is Rabbi Elazar Shimon. Why does Rabbi Elazar Shimon not agree with them? The pasuk says bevoam, when they come. So therefore, coming is all that. So so again, we're going to ask the question, what do they do with each other's psukim? What about bevoam? Iksiv begishtam v'lo ksiv bevoam. If it says when they come close, but doesn't say when they arrive, havamina al kol gisha v'gisha. Then I would have thought that every time you show up to do any service in the Beis HaMikdash, you have to wash your hands again and again and again, right? If I burn this, and now I go over here and I do this, I got to wash it between every service. So therefore, Kasav Rachmana bevoam. So therefore, Rebbe says that's why it says bevoam. You walk to the Beis HaMikdash one time, you wash, right? But it doesn't last forever. Then there's still a begish tam. When you show up to the Beis HaMikdash the first time, you got to wash. So therefore, every day you wash, but then it lasts as long as you're there, as long as the next day. Ve'idach nami haksiv begish tam. So what does the other one do with begish tam? Doesn't that mean that you have to rewash? Ikasav bevoam. If it had said bevoam, veloksiv begish tam. If it had said bevoam but did not say begish tam, havmin afilu abia rekonis. So I would have thought that maybe even when you show up to the Beis HaMikdash, you don't do any work. You have to wash your hands. First thing you do when you walk in the Beis HaMikdash, you wash your hands. Maybe even if I'm not doing any service. So abia rekonis. Haksiv l'shareis, where he says that you wouldn't have that understanding. The pasuk clearly says that you wash your hands when you're coming to serve, right? If you're just coming there and you're going to stand and watch, you don't have to wash. Ela begishtam boile lichter Rav Acha bar Yaakov. Rather, the word begishtam tells me something else. What Rav Acha bar Yaakov says. Rav Acha bar Yaakov says hakol modim. Everyone agrees. Bekiddush sheni keshehu lavush mekadesh. Everyone agrees that. The Kohen Gadol, when he washes, right? We said he has to wash before and after, right? Before each garment change. Mm-hmm. Everyone agrees that the Kohen Gadol is dressed when he washes the second time. He gets dressed, then he comes out of the mikvah, gets dressed, then he washes. My taima damakar. Well, how do you know that? Because the pasuk says, "O begish tam," right? When he comes close, meaning that the only thing that he's lacking in order to continue the service is showing up, walking in. Then he has to wash. Misha eno mechuser ela gisha bilvad. Right? That would mean a Kohen isn't going to wash what he's missing, wearing his garments and coming into the Beis HaMikdash. So therefore, he's going to wash right when he is already dressed. But the argument that they have over there in Maseches Yoma is, does he get undressed first and then wash his hands and then go to the mikvah, or does he wash his hands and then get undressed and then go to the mikvah? That's question over there in Maseches Yoma, right? So, but nevertheless, the word begishtam is used for a different purpose. Okay, lehaktir isha lamali. So then, what is the pasuk? Right, the language of the pasuk continues on. Bevoam el ohel moed. When they show up to the ohel moed, o begishtam al mizbeach, or when they come close to the mizbeach. Since we're in that pasuk, the next part says lehaktir isha Hashem, in order to burn a fire to Hashem. Lehaktir isha lamali. Why do I need to mention that they're coming to wash their hands so that they can burn a fire to Hashem? Mahu detema. What would I have thought? Honey mili avoda demeakfa kapara. That they only have to wash their hands if they are doing a service which is required in order for the sacrifice to be get an atonement, which we said was shchita, kabbalah, holacha, and zrika, right? Aval avoda de lo ma'akfa kapara lo, but they wouldn't have to wash their hands. Say if they were burning their the korbanos on the mizbeach wouldn't be necessary. Kamash molan. That's why the pasuk says that when he comes in and he's coming to just burn fats on the mizbeach, still you need a hand washing. This is a good place to stop. The top of Chaf Amud.
Amazing.
Beautiful.
Okay, what time is it tonight?
8:30.